Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the History of Fan Anime. I'm your host, William Chow, and today I'm going to get to finally one of the very episodes I've been sort of waiting for to do for the last long time. And in this episode, I'm going to get into one of the things I've been long waiting to do, and that is go into MyAnimeList and check out all the anime titles released in the year 1989. And this is really important because now, a lot of new animes are coming out. This OVA Revolutions is sort of coming out, so a lot of smaller and shorter OVAs are coming out, and so lots of good titles and that kind of stuff. I'm just really, getting into the letter writing, and I'm actually now getting some tape trades going, and this whole idea of trying to get maybe some subtitling equipment is all sort of kind of floating around. So I'm really getting heavily into this anime genre thing. And again, you gotta realize virtually nothing out in North America here is available yet, right? A lot of these major companies aren't releasing stuff until like 1992. So we're still, getting all the stuff in Japanese. There's lots of titles out there. We may not understand it, and we may not have a really good access to it, but we know it's there, okay? And so in this episode, I want to get into all the titles in 1989. And the other good thing I want to do is at this time is be able to get and finally finish all the titles from 1990, like 1980s, right? Basically, and then with that, I can then now make a nice, concise and more, very very complete listing of all the top animes, both in TV shows, as OVAs, and as movies, and kind of tier list them all together into some sort of sort of very definitive best of the 80s type of, listing. Okay. And again, that's what the next sort of thing I need to do. And, I need to get through all these episodes in order to get, the titles and that kind of stuff, and get the basis of, and get the sort of like little database going. Okay. So that's a good introduction. Again, I want you to remind everyone to go down below, click like and click subscribe. And that way you get notified when I put a new episode. Now, one of the new things that I've got now finally installed down there is there is now a thanks button. So again, you don't have to wait until the anime giveaways. I don't ask, you don't have to, but I mean, if you particularly like a particular episode and you wanna give me thanks, well, I mean, go right there. A Patreon page where I can finally start getting some of the special, content and that kind of stuff available, and it gives you, other people some alternatives for other things I can do. That will be soon available, so just keep an eye out for that. I will tell you when that comes out, and that will be another alternative in order to get some content that you couldn't normally get on YouTube, because again, YouTube really restricts some of the stuff that I'm allowed here. So, some other place I can, get some more content, right? So, without further delay, let's begin. So I can begin with the TV shows right now, and and generally speaking, in the summer session, there's not a heck of a lot of good titles and that kind of stuff, because everyone sort of releases stuff in the spring, right? Because that's sort of like the new season and that kind of stuff. And again, this year, there's a lot of good titles that sort of came out, big names. So obviously, things that start off in the fall section just tend to be not as good, right? So neither of these two titles are anything significant. And if you quickly look ahead and see what titles came out, of course, they came out with like Dragon Ball and Ranma, Shirado. So I mean, these are like some pretty big blockbuster type titles, right? So I mean, if you were going to release something, you're going to be like, backbench to that kind of stuff, right? Because you think, if someone's going to watch anime or whatnot, you'd be much more likely to watch episodes of Ranma and Dragon Ball rather than whatever your new show is. So again, anything that you put in this time slot will be probably really poorly done. So a lot of companies know, hey, let's not spend a big budget show and then kind of stick it in here, because it's probably not going to do very well against your competition, right? So we'll just scroll ahead through all the other TV shows and go right to the OVAs. Okay, so we go right to the OVAs, and probably one of the first things that you'll sort of really notice is that, when I first started doing these anime lists, I listed off a lot of movies and OVAs, but for the most part, even to today's standards, most people don't know what they are and have no English release or even subtitled or dubbed release. to almost 10 years later. All right, now that we're just approaching the 1990s, and you'll realize that virtually all these OVAs you sort of know about or have an English release, English dub release, and that's important to note because I said, we are now getting into the era where these commercial companies in North America are starting to realize, hey, this anime thing is pretty serious. This might be some sort of potential money making thing. This is sort of this on emerging genre, right? Now you can still gotta remember, the commercial companies, even though they look at an idea like Bubblegum Crisis, for example, they may not get Bubblegum Crisis and get it all licensed and all the technical work and that kind of stuff dubbed for the dubbing and the subtitling and that kind of stuff. They may not even get that all ready until literally 3 years from now. So, when we look at the magazines and stuff, and we see, hey, we've got shows like as I show here, Gunbusters and Mobile Suit Gundam 0080 and Bubblegum Crisis, right? We see these in the magazines, back in 1989, and we're going, wow, this is like cool. Oh man, I love to see this kind of stuff, right? We would be getting this stuff, passed around and whatnot from videotape, copies and that kind of stuff that we'd pass around. They wouldn't have subtitles on. They wouldn't be dubbed or anyway, and we won't get them dubbed for 3 years, 5 years, in some cases even 7 years from now. We won't even get a copy of it for subtitle or dub. But this is sort of a very fascinating era where you have to understand, if you want to see something like the first title here, Gunbusters, because you heard a lot about it, or it's Mikimoto artwork, right? The same guy does Macross. You pretty much had to kind of get it and just sort of tough it out. Maybe you might have a synopsis book or something that might kind of give you a hand, sort of telling you what's sort of going on. Gundam 080 is also a Mikimoto title. It is about Gundams and that kind of stuff, but you don't actually have to know the whole Gundam storyline to understand what's going on. It is sort of from the point of view of a child caught up in a war. I guess like most Gundams are. I guess that's not too different from Amuro or Camille or Judo, right? They're all sort of that kind of thing, right? Kids caught up in war. So it's a very nice story of that one. And again, it's one of the recommended OVAs that I definitely do for a Gundam series. And of course, Bubblegum Crisis, that follows the genre of the girls with guns and gore, with a nice sort of cyberpunk sort of futuristic, sexual dolls and that kind of stuff. I think so. It was really kind of a new sort of cutting edge there too. But again, a lot of these titles won't be released until halfway through the 90s. By the time they become popular. So it's really kind of an interesting point where you are experiencing something that is so experimental and so different that you feel that you're ahead of the time. You sort of you're in the loop, but you kind of at a disadvantage because of the fact that you just can't quite get the language. But you feel that this is a new trend that's going to happen and it's going to click in. You just riding the wave. I guess if there was such a thing as a stock market for anime, this is sort of things where you go, okay, maybe I'll hedge my bet and I'll bet on anime kind of thing, right? And then we flip to the next part of the list here, and we have Angel Cop. Okay, so again, as much as the kick-assery is, as it were, the Kill Bill type thing, it's this is a really appealing type show. Good artwork as well. And lots of action, high in the gore factor. So definitely some of those titles that definitely fits in this genre at this present moment. And then we got two sort of related titles, Bao and Guyver. Okay, and again, even at this time, there was this this Guyver comic that first came out, and then of course Viz came out with the Bao comics, and very, very popular because again, it's these guys in these sort of armors, and they have a lot of kind of biotech and that kind of stuff in them, and it's really kind of a fascinating sort of sort of an untapped sort of market at this particular point, because you got to realize that in the comic book industry right now, it's primarily still ruled by the big two, which is Marvel and DC, and virtually everything in there is all superheroes, right? X-Men, Superman, Spider-Man, you name it. X-Men, for example, are the really big titles right now, right? So and they dominate the market, like 70-80% of the market is those guys, right? So all of a sudden, to get a different kind of superpower, okay, is a different thing. I mean, it's still superheroes tend to be the the primary selling force or selling idea for comics, right? But now we to introduce a different kind of hero, right? We get into a whole different genre of this kind of thing, things with Bao, and then of course even a little later we even get to a different kind of genre, which which get into, like, for example, all the Sentai stuff, the Power Rangers and all that kind of stuff. That'll follow later on as well. But this is our first glimpse at a new kind of hero telling type story. Okay, so scrolling down, we get to the next title, which is Shin Captain Tsubasa. Now, again, Captain Tsubasa is I remember in our day, we didn't even know what the name was. So we just called him Soccer Boy. But yes, it's, the traditional, story of, a kid growing up in soccer and winning tournaments and that kind of stuff and games and whatnot. And the hardships that requires. But, so this is Shin, Captain Tsubasa, which is the new series. Again, not a lot of people follow this. Again, in North America, again, soccer is not a really big sport, so it's it really falls behind all the other major sports, including hockey. So, not a lot of following on that one. But a few people had the odd episodes here and there. That's for sure. The next one is Earthian. Now, this is really cool because the manga is done by Yun Koga, which I always thought was very, very artistic and kind of it's different than very soft, right? And so it's a little different than a lot of the mangas that were out at this particular time. But it also has in the anime, the character design is done by one of my favorite people who does the OVA for Tenkosei, which is one of these smut games for the computer, which in which case you're like the janitor in this sort of school, and you control these students and that kind of stuff. So it's another one of those type of games. But yeah, he does all the character designs for this thing, so it's kind of a neat, interesting mix. But yeah, it's a nice one-shot OVA. I remember we did something else for that. It was kind of a really popular thing to use as a fill-in for a lot of our meetings. So it's a nice one-shot OVA. Other than that, yeah, so we just continue along. No one knows what that is. We come up to Legend of Lenmar. Now, I've talked about this quite a few times. This one's done by our very famous Satoshi Ushihara, which we gave him the nickname The Breast Man. Of course, it stuck for a while, so I think they still call him that now. But yeah, so this is one of the first OVAs they made. Again, very, kind of a, similar type of, sword, sword and medieval type of thing with some little bit of technology in there. Some people say that, that character looks very, very similar to, like, Luna from Langrisser. And, again, I think Langrisser came out after this, so, his character designs don't change all that much. But definitely, very, very popular type of series. And again, he made this before he made Plastic Little. So, this is sort of more of a action one than showing the female body kind of anime. But yeah, definitely one to check out. Very popular. And the next one is Mobile Suit SD Charge Counterattack. Now again, I mentioned this when I was talking about Heaven Wars Shirato. This is also one of these eras where they just, they realize that there is this market for people making fun of their own anime, right? Like, when an anime comes out, and you leave a lot of empty, unanswered questions, a lot of the doujinshis and stuff will fill in. If you have situational things in your story that seem to have an interesting take or whatever, then a lot of people who will write stories and make doujinshis that work off of that. And so a lot of these companies, especially for people who made, for example, like Heavenward Shirado, and obviously the things like Gundam, Golf Force, for example, they decided, hey, instead of letting some doujinshi people or whatever, make up and bring these kind of points in these stories, out to left field, as it were. Why don't we do it? We have access to the actors and the voice actors, so we can make them do all these crazy stunts and that kind of stuff, and then we can profit off of it, right? So this is their version of basically taking, okay, let's take Gundam Charge Counterattack, and let's make fun of it, and by doing so, we'll make it in this super deformed fashion, right? So one of the things was like, I'm just trying to remember one of the jokes is that Char is afraid of ghosts, right? And of course, in the show, a whole bunch of the girls are quote ghosts, right? And so they have basically little gags like him trying to go for trick or treating or whatever, and all of a sudden he's being chased around by the ghosts of Lala and Four and all the other new types, all chasing after Char, and he's running away, and whatnot, right? So this is sort of one of these funny things that they can take off on. And I said in an earlier episode when I was talking about Heavenward Shirado, they're making jokes about Renge 1/3, which is basically the character for Renge in that one is done by the same person who does the character for Ranma Half, which is also playing right now, during this time period. And so they made a play on the joke, so that whenever you splash water on Renge, she changes into the next character that was also played by that same voice actor. And so that's the ingoing joke, right? And the last one on the list is the Super Mario Brothers anime. And this is really kind of interesting because only now in let's say the modern time do we know and have made out this the Mario franchise to be as large as it has. Nintendo has done a really good job milking that merchandise all the way to that. But you got to realize at this time, especially when we are talking just early stages of the Super Nintendo era, right? Like not even the Nintendo / Super Nintendo era, right? Super Mario isn't a well-known household, as big as a phenomenon as he is right now, because a lot of the games that he will be really big in haven't been made yet, right? So when this anime came out, I guess to push the popularity of Super Mario, it really didn't do very well. I mean, to my memory, I don't even remember virtually anybody having a Super Mario Brothers or anything like that, on their trading list and that kind of stuff. So I guess it wasn't very well traded, very well distributed at this particular time. And again, just because the popularity of the Super Nintendo / Nintendo thing just hasn't really caught on, and the games that they had made for this one just wasn't a big thing yet, right? Probably won't be until let's say, for example, the N64 when that comes out, and then they come up with like Mario Kart, right? Then I think that's when it starts taking off. But by then, right now, that's 1989, right? We're not at the N64 stage yet, right? So you got to remember it was still quite a ways off from that. We have Blue Sonnet. Okay, that one was released over here, and another one. There's Cyborg / ESP people. Because that's sort of the big trend right now, right? Things like Guyver, Cosmo Police Justy, things like that. More of this kind of a thing, always comes out. So Blue Sonnet is one of those, that type of series. But more of favorably, the next one is one of my favorite, Ariel. Okay, now this is one of the ones that Daisuke just loved, and I remember even when we got the comics and the visual novels, and I went out and bought the audio CD things for that, right? So that Daisuke could go with that. Unfortunately, we never actually wrote a translated version of the audio. I really wish we maybe do that. Yeah, Ariel is an acronym, right? It stands for All Around Intercepted Escort Lady, and we haven't had these crazy things until like maybe like Amazing Nurse Nanako is probably the next one that will come up on this type of series where it's the mad professor doctor who works for the JDSF, and he decides to build an attack robot based on the likeness of his deceased wife, and and basically he gets his three nieces to basically be the pilots of this defense robot. And of course, the aliens come, and there's nothing that anyone can do except they have to the Japanese self-defense force has to use the aerial robot to beat down the aliens. So yeah, really short overview. Again, because Daisy really loved it. We had a really good fun time subtitling this one. And it was it's kind of a fun sort of anime. And they said they really didn't make this kind of an anime until next time around when they come around to making Amazing Nurse Nanako, which of course is, if you see the poster behind me, that would be one of those that I have there. And the next one, Midori no Naka, no one knows what that is, so I'll skip over that one. And we'll go to the next line here. Now, in the next line, we have High Speed JC. So this is another one. This is actually one of the really unknown ones. Again, done by Mikimoto. So the guy who does, is giving you Macross and Megazone 23 and Gunbusters, right? He comes up with another show about a runner. Okay. Not necessarily the Flash, but the person who can that's really skilled at that, and it really kind of actually really flew underneath everyone's radar, and some people knew about it. I knew copies were available, but again, I think for some strange reason it just never really got any interest to get released over here. So it's just kind of one of those that kind of, I guess, slipped between the lines, as it were. Okay, so the next one on the list is it's a shoujo title actually. Yakakito Gakuen. Now this is sort of like the school of Yakido, I guess, like that kind of stuff. And basically two female warriors, to carry on the ninja code and that kind of stuff, and beat down bad guys and that kind of stuff. Really, not that much different the story than La Blue Girl, except of course La Blue Girl is a full hentai doing ninja thing. With the two girls as part of some legendary ninja clan. So this is sort of the shoujo version of that same kind of idea. Yeah, nobody heard of this shoujo. I'll continue onwards. Because shoujo at this time was not a really big thing, so it's just I guess a little bit early for its time. Next one is Cinderella Express. Now this is kind of one of these kind of smuttier looking like titles. It's not actually part of the Cream Lemon set. That looks like it's something that might belong in it. It's probably closer to something from the Lemon Angel set. But just something that I think they put out just to try to make it as spicy as possible and try to get it away with it as without being 18 and over type of thing. Just try to slip it just enough to to get below that rating so that they can still be general market but still have high market appeal. Okay, so continue on here. We have the Borgman Last Battle. So after finishing the Borgman TV series, this is the OVA that's supposed to finish off that final fight that's at the very end there. So this is the OVA for that. So a lot of people are sort of waiting for that one. Next one is Shin Wataru. So again, this is the new series for Wataru. Again, if you've played Heath Courage on the PC Engine, or of course, if you're playing Langrisser Mobile, they did a crossover with Wataru characters. So, this is from that particular series. Again, limited success with that one because some people knew what sort of was, but again, no one was really translating it, no one was subtitling it or anything like that. So, the distribution of that was very limited. Again, we did the subtitles for Borgman. That's different. So obviously we had to do the subtitles for Last Borgman. It's kind of strange that when the commercial companies got around to releasing things for Borgman, all they ever did was Last Battle and Lover's Reign. So they basically just only did the OVAs. They kind of skipped over the entire TV series, which is kind of distressing because, like, I don't know, even to date now, there isn't really a subtitled version of the TV series for Borgman that was commercially released. Only just the end of it, like as if it were like we were supposed to kind of assume that all this conflict was already sort of happening, and then this is sort of the end of it. Kind of very bizarre marketing for that. And then of course there's nothing else that's that exciting about that. The Montagari is, again, more continuation of another sort of OVA series. Looks like California Crisis type of thing. Another, got another baseball anime. Well, Lisa's Not Touch or Miyuki or Nine, those type of things. But still, I don't, follow the anime baseball stories until get to like Princess Nine maybe. Let's see, Mario Nissan, which is again the OVA for that TV series, was again no one knows what that one was, and the last one here no one knows what that is either. So not too many significant ones on this particular page. Okay, so we skip ahead here, and we get basically the last two titles here, the Seikyu Montagari, which just happens to be about like famous composers and that kind of stuff. Again, no one's heard of that one. And the last one, of course, is Kando Kijuku. Again, no one's heard of this one either. So I'll skip ahead to the movies now. And the movies is nice and convenient. The fact that they put the top blockbuster movies right at the very top here. So right away, Kiki's Delivery Service. I mean, when you talk, stupid Ghibli stuff, you really can't go too wrong. I mean, it's not it's kind of a little different from the Nausicaa or Castle in the Sky, but I mean definitely the same kind of story. Kind of. The trials of a witch and that kind of stuff. And again, you really can't go too wrong with the art quality, great music in it as well. Definitely a nice, fun, light story too. So really popular feature that we used to use at all our various different club meetings and that kind of stuff. So definitely a good choice there. The next one is, of course, the Dragon Ball Z movie, and again, because Dragon Ball is just getting started as a new series and that kind of stuff. So a lot of people are getting into that. So everyone was expecting more animation from Dragon Ball. So always very popular. And the third one on the list is the Pat Labor movie. Okay, so this is again they started releasing the OVAs for Pat Labor. The idea of the sort of a more advanced police force and having to use these sort of giant labor robots and that kind of stuff to keep the peace and that kind of stuff, and then we're following the story of Noah. And again, I love this anime because because it has the artwork from Akimi Takada, of course, which does all the things from like Orange Wood and that kind of stuff. Daisuke just loved it because he loved the character Goto. Just that, that sort of offbeat sort of guy, just like Yotsuya and that kind of stuff from Maison Akaku. So again, we had a lot of fun when we translated the Pat Labor TV series, and and the OVAs and that kind of stuff that came with it. It's just lots of great episodes in Pat Labor. That was really, really fun, and so yeah, definitely. And the movie, okay. Truth said, the movie was very well, good production, and the animation quality is good, the action sequences are good, the story has a lot of, a lot of like story devices, like foreshadowing and pre-telling and kind of things like that. So it may be a little bit hard to follow, a little bit hard, to see the logic and all the intricacies that are in this movie, but it's a very, very well done movie. And it's a kind of a nice masterpiece. Again, great soundtrack and everything else. So definitely, that's my recommendation for this series. Okay, we scroll up to the last couple movies here. First up the list is Little Nemo. Also add the Adventures in Slumberland, and this is an interesting one because it got really little market sort of thing, and very few people were aware of it at that time. Again, I think it's just again because of the infancy of the anime at the time. But yeah, the story about it had apparently a lot of really big names. Even Miyazaki, which is well known for a lot of the Studio Ghibli stuff, was apparently listed as one of the people that sort of wanted to work on this, but again left the project. Even Ray Bradbury, the science fiction author, was apparently listed as wanting to work on this particular film. In the end, it was made. It had kind of minimal success in the theaters. There was one of the things that had a U.S. release apparently, and I remember seeing the video cover for this thing, on VHS, and again, I never really paid attention to it. Again, because according to the release date, it was in 1992, and again, you gotta think all these other big animes just sort of came out in '92. So when you put Little Nemo, which is it is an anime, but when you compare it to things like Bubblegum Crisis and that kind of stuff, that which are really real kind of Japanese animated characters and that kind of stuff. And you compare it to something like Little Nemo, you kind of go, well, like, it's just almost night and day, right? And of course, so the industry for anime took off in the U.S., kind of, as I said, burying this title, in the kind of in the background. So again, an interesting story for that particular anime. But again, at the time, no one really knew what this really was. And the remaining titles here are insignificant because not very many people knew what any of these ones were. I don't even recognize them myself. So let's continue on there. And we just scroll to the last one. There's these are specials. Again, there's rather insignificant name for a special there. So that pretty well wraps up season 3 for 1989. And wow, this video is getting pretty long as it is. So again, I think this is kind of a testament to what's going to happen in the future. Like more of these episodes are going to get longer and longer as more and more of these animes become more well known, right? So I'll have to basically go over each and every single title, in briefer description. As I said, more of them will become licensed and released, so you'll know what they are. But I'll still give you my top hits. Okay, so right away, we can tell that there were no new TV series because, as I mentioned, this is not the real good season to release new animes in the TV series world. So there were no TV recommendations. I'll do the movies next. Just like I mentioned right here, they put the top 3 movies right at the very top. Again, Kiki's Delivery Service. Again, you can't go too much wrong with Studio Ghibli. That's a surefire hit there. I really loved the Pat Labor movie. Actually, both Pat Labor movies. Pat Labor 1 and Pat Labor 2. But the Pat Labor 1, very nice, very stylized, great animation, great combat scenes too, and a great soundtrack. So, it had everything going for it. So, I definitely do recommend the Pat Labor movie. And of course, Dragon Ball Z movie, again, because a lot of people are following the series, and they're always waited with tainted breath to kind of go, yes, when's the next movie coming out? So again, here you go, Dragon Ball Z the movie. So those are my recommendations for movies. Okay, so now we get down to the last thing, the OVAs, which is again probably one of the hardest because again, there's lots of good titles now, right? There's it's not just a big whim of anime OVAs, and most of them weren't released, so a lot of people don't know what they are, right? But now we're starting to get into a phase where a good chunk of the OVAs are licensed, and there's translations for both English dub and English sub available now. But at the time, there was nothing out there, and the companies are haven't got around to these things and probably won't get to a lot of them for a long time to come. And but so there are some titles that I'm gonna definitely recommend. But before I do that, I'm gonna basically say some of those titles that I sort of went to and I kind of went, well, this is really hard to kind of chop these down. So I'm gonna mark it down to a top 6, okay? And some of the titles I'm going to remove out of the list just so that you know that I would have actually picked the Angel Cop because I actually do like that that style. It is a little bit dirtier, kind of like and what I mean is there's lots of heavy lines in it, which is different than what I really like and what I'm used to, like soft lines, like what for example like what a Kimitaka would do, watercolor with light lines. But still, it was a fairly decent anime. But I wouldn't put it with the rest of these ones. Bao and Guyver, again, with these manga types using that, was interesting because I remember I did follow and get the comics for Guyver and that kind of stuff. But when it came to the anime, I didn't like this particular series of Guyver as much as I liked the original Bio Booster Guyver um, uh, that they released. So that's why I'm not putting this one on the list. And the last thing I wanted to make a mention was is High Speed JC. Now, although that is one of my sort of kind of my personal biased favorites, but again, I understand that even though that it is a Mikimoto piece of work, there was a lot of stuff that he did that didn't get a commercial release or anything like that, and so. Would I wanted it on the top six? I think for this period there was more titles that would probably worth more worthwhile. Again, he's got Gunbusters and 080 coming as well. So I mean, Mikimoto is pretty well covered for this season. So definitely, that one is one of the ones that could make the top six. So what does that mean? Well, these are your titles for your top six. So obviously, I just mentioned Gunbusters and Gundam 0080. Both made by Mikimoto. So again, if you love that, Megazone 23, Macross, Orgus, all those type of titles, then this is it. He made this up and definitely very very popular OVA series. Okay. The third title is going to be Bubblegum Crisis. Again, they're continuing releasing a lot of OVAs. Kenichi Sonoda, has really came up with a good idea with girls, guns, and hard suits. So definitely a good sort of mixture there. So those are kind of the obvious ones. You kind of you looked at my previous video. Those were the same kind of choices I made. So what are the three extra ones I added? Now comes into pretty easy. I picked Ariel. And part of the reason I picked Ariel is not because again it's sold well or not anything like that. I mean, I think some of the other titles if I mentioned like for example Bio Booster Guyver, it probably sold more copies than let's say for example Ariel did when it first got released. But in terms of the type of show it is and the uniqueness that it is, the story that it kind of tells and where it sort of fits. Again, not in terms of popularity, it probably wasn't as popular as Guyver, but I think the story and the context that we did, of course, we fan subbed it. As I said, Ariel was, to me, a better title, just a lot more personal things. So again, something that if you had a chance to definitely check that one out. If you haven't, because most people probably already checked out Guyver, but not very many people have picked out and got Ariel. So that's my recommendation there. My fifth one for this one is Legend of Lenmar. Again, a little bit of a personal bias, because it is Satoshi Ushihara. But, this is the front of many sort of different animes of this particular type that are sort of coming out. And at this time, there's not a lot of that kind of, should I say AD&D type of thing and kind of, setting and the kind of thing. Again, I like the artwork. Like the character design. Just wish they made more of it. That's all. And again, the comics came out, and those were really, really popular for that. So, okay. And the last one I wanted to mention is number 6, and that's probably the most controversial one, and that would be Earthian. Now, again, I made a mention that if I had to go and pick my 6th title out of this lot, I probably should have picked Guyver, but again, I didn't personally like this particular version of Guyver. This rendition of Guyver as opposed to the single shot OVA of Guyver that was released earlier. I definitely have to put Earthian in this list. Now, Earthian, unlike Guyver, is done by Yun Koga, very very popular shoujo artist and that kind of stuff in Japan. And a lot of his stuff is very, it's different, right? It's not a hard line. It's a lot softer lines, being shoujo, of course, is also one of the mediums that wasn't really coming out at this time. But just linked with it, a lot of good character designers, a lot of good artwork and that kind of stuff for Earthian was being made. So it had more star power, shall we say, and that was why it became a little more popular, especially at this time, finding animes that brought in the female audience and whatnot, and their stories and that kind of stuff. Again, I think Earthian was probably one of the ones that kind of started that. Before we get into the Magic Girl era and that kind of stuff, this is one of those type of shoujo titles that sort of was really key. So that rounds out my top 6. Not in any particular order, but just sort of the order that sort of came out up on the screen here. But yes, Gunbusters, Gundam 008, Bubble Crisis, Ariel, Legend of Lenmar, and Earthian. So again, if you have some time, do check out some of these titles. They definitely are, pretty worthwhile out of this lot. And again, these lots are going to get bigger and bigger, and these decisions are going to get a little bit harder and harder. But definitely, that is why I'm really anxious to get started on trying to do my rank listings for the best animes for 1980. All right. I hope you enjoyed some of the animes and you can see there's a lot of really good animes coming out at this time. So again, this is where the market has sort of shifted, and I was realized that hey, there's some pretty good animes out there. So we can start the 1990s with a really good, nice kickstart with all these different titles coming out. And don't forget to stay tuned, and as we get into the breakdown of some of the better animes for this era, a decade of the 1980s. All right, so until next time, see you again.